I stared at the formal letter in disbelief. My sister Amanda, now my landlord, was raising my rent from $2,350 to $7,100 monthly. With shaking hands, I brought the notice to our family dinner. When I questioned the outrageous increase, Amanda simply smirked. "It's fair market value," she said coolly. Mom and Dad nodded approvingly. What they didn't know was that I had secretly purchased the entire building 3 years ago through my property management company. Even better, Grandma had left me everything I needed to destroy Amanda's plans completely. Growing up as the second daughter in the Taylor family meant living in Amanda's shadow. While I studied diligently and maintained a quiet demeanor, Amanda dazzled our parents with her outgoing personality and seemingly brilliant business ideas. My straight A's were acknowledged with a pat on the shoulder, while her B's and occasional C's were celebrated with dinners out and new clothes. "Your sister just has that special spark," Mom would say. "Not everyone is meant for the spotlight, honey," Dad would add, as if to comfort me for lacking whatever magic Amanda possessed. I didn't resent my sister during those early years. I simply accepted that family dynamics weren't always fair and focused on building my own path. While Amanda attended an expensive private university and changed majors 3 times, I earned scholarships to study law with a focus on real estate and property rights. My parents viewed my practical career choice as uninspired compared to Amanda's dreams of becoming a property mogul. Grandma Eleanor was different. My father's mother had built a modest real estate portfolio during her 50 years as a widow, turning her husband's life insurance payout into security for her family. She recognized something in me that my parents missed: patience, thoroughness, and genuine interest in how property could improve communities rather than just generate profit. "Helene, you have the mind of a true builder," she would tell me during our weekly Sunday visits. "Time that Amanda never made for Grandma. You see the whole picture, not just dollar signs." By 30, I had established myself as a respected real estate attorney, specializing in tenant rights and sustainable development. Amanda, meanwhile, had burned through 3 business ventures, each time convincing our parents to invest just a little more to help her reach that elusive breakthrough. Grandma Eleanor passed away when I was 32. At the reading of her will, I was shocked to learn she had left me 80% of her estate, including her personal journals and a mysterious locked metal box with instructions to open it when the time was right. Amanda received the remaining 20%, a still generous sum, but her tightly controlled smile couldn't hide her fury at not receiving an equal share. 6 months after Grandma's passing, I received an interesting call from Marcy Wilson, Grandma's longtime friend and real estate partner. "Your sister is trying to sell the Riverside property," she said, referring to the 20-unit apartment building where I had been renting a 2-bedroom unit for the past 5 years. "She's in financial trouble and needs cash fast." I was stunned. Grandma had always talked about leaving the building to both of us jointly, with the understanding it would remain affordable housing. Had something changed? Careful investigation through my legal channels revealed the truth. Amanda had convinced our grandmother to sign over the property to her exclusively during Grandma's final, heavily medicated weeks. The transaction looked suspicious, but proving undue influence would be difficult and would tear the family apart. Instead, I formulated a different plan. Through Evergreen Properties, a management company I had established with my savings and part of my inheritance, I created a shell corporation called Riverview Holdings. Working through an intermediary broker, I made Amanda an offer she couldn't refuse. 15% above market value, cash payment, quick closing. Desperate for money and unaware of the buyer's identity, Amanda accepted immediately. The closing was handled entirely through attorneys, with no direct contact between buyer and seller. I signed the final papers with a strange sense of satisfaction. I now owned the building where I lived, while my sister thought she had cleverly unloaded it for a premium price. I decided to maintain my rental agreement and continue paying rent, to myself, essentially, to avoid raising suspicions. I implemented modest improvements to the building, while keeping rent stable for all tenants, many of whom were seniors or families who had lived there for decades. For 3 years, this arrangement worked perfectly. Amanda appeared to stabilize financially and even began to boast about her new investment portfolio. Our parents beamed with pride at family gatherings as she dropped hints about exclusive deals and high-powered business connections. Then came the day that changed everything. While organizing some files Grandma had left me, I discovered financial documents hidden within a false bottom of her keepsake box. The papers revealed a shocking truth. Amanda had been systematically embezzling from our parents' retirement accounts, transferring small amounts regularly into an offshore account. The total now exceeded $300,000, nearly half of their retirement savings. Worse yet, my parents had no idea their golden child was stealing their future security to maintain her facade of success. The discovery left me breathless. This wasn't just about sibling rivalry anymore. My sister was committing felony theft against our own parents, putting their future at risk. I now understood why Grandma had left me the majority of her estate. She had suspected Amanda's true nature all along. The rent increase notice arrived on crisp company letterhead from Taylor Elite Properties, Amanda's newest venture. The letter was coldly professional, citing market adjustments and property improvements as justification for the astronomical increase from $2,350 to $7,100 monthly. It gave me exactly 30 days to either accept the new rate or vacate the premises. I stared at the signature, not even handwritten, but a digital stamp of Amanda's name. No personal note, no acknowledgement of our relationship, not even the courtesy of a phone call beforehand. Just business, apparently. That evening, I arrived at our monthly family dinner with the notice folded in my purse, my stomach in knots. Mom had prepared her specialty lasagna, and Dad was pouring wine when Amanda made her entrance, 20 minutes late as usual, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Sorry I'm late," she announced without sounding sorry at all. "Just closed a major deal with some investors." The champagne celebration ran long. She kissed the air near our parents' cheeks before taking her seat at the head of the table, a position she had claimed years ago. Halfway through dinner, as I was gathering my courage to bring up the rent increase, Amanda did it for me. "So, Helene," she said, swirling her wine glass, "did you receive my notice? I sent it to all the Riverside tenants today." Mom looked confused. "Notice? What notice, dear?" Amanda smiled. That same smirk I had seen countless times when she knew she had the upper hand. "I've adjusted the rents at Riverside to reflect current market values. It's been undervalued for years." I pulled the letter from my purse and slid it across the table to my parents. "She's tripling my rent. From $2,350 to $7,100 per month." Dad scanned the document, then handed it to Mom. I waited for their reaction. Surely they would see how outrageous this was. "Well," Dad said finally, "property values in that area have skyrocketed. This seems fair." "Fair?" I echoed. "The average two-bedroom in our neighborhood goes for around $3,000. This is more than double that." Mom patted my hand patronizingly. "Honey, your sister is the business expert. If she says this is market value, I'm sure she's done her research." Amanda's smirk widened. "Actually, I have plans for Riverside. The building has potential beyond its current use. These new rates reflect its future value." Something in her tone sent a chill through me. This wasn't just about squeezing more rent from tenants. She had bigger plans. The next day, I began my investigation. First, I checked rental listings throughout our area. As I suspected, even luxury apartments weren't commanding anything close to $7,000 for a two-bedroom unit. The highest was $4,200, and that included concierge service and rooftop amenities our building certainly didn't offer. Grandma Eleanor was different. My father's mother had built a modest real estate portfolio during her 50 years as a widow, turning her husband's life insurance payout into security for her family. She recognized something in me that my parents missed: patience, thoroughness, and genuine interest in how property could improve communities rather than just generate profit. That afternoon, I accidentally ran into the building maintenance man, Frank, who had worked there since Grandma's time. After some casual conversation, I mentioned the rent increases. Frank looked around nervously before speaking. "Between us, Miss Helene, I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but I've been instructed to stop making repairs. Miss Amanda told me to just do the bare minimum legally required. said it wouldn't matter soon anyway. What do you mean it wouldn't matter? He lowered his voice further. I overheard her on the phone with some developer. They're planning to convert the whole building to luxury condos. These rent hikes, they're not expecting people to pay. They want everyone out. I thanked Frank and returned to my apartment, mind racing. Condo conversion would explain the excessive rent increases. It was a strategy some unethical landlords used to circumvent tenant protection laws. If tenants left voluntarily because they couldn't afford the new rates, certain eviction restrictions could be bypassed. The next day, I took a calculated risk and used my position as the actual owner to access the building's business email account. There, I found correspondence between Amanda and Westfield Development Group confirming my fears. The plans detailed gutting the entire structure, combining units to create fewer, larger, luxury condos selling for over $1 million each. I called Janet Miller, my mentor at the law firm where I worked. After explaining the situation without revealing my ownership, I asked her professional opinion. This is troubling on multiple fronts, Janet said. First, condo conversions require permits, tenant notifications, and often relocation assistance. Has she filed any paperwork with the city? A quick check with my contacts in the permits department confirmed she hadn't. Second, Janet continued, charging rent significantly above market rate could be considered constructive eviction, especially with the clear intent to convert. The tenants might have a case against her. I was taking careful notes, documenting every finding. Something told me I'd need comprehensive evidence before this was over. That evening, I received a text from my college friend Taylor, who worked for a luxury real estate agency across town. Weird question. Is your sister selling condos in your building? Someone at a party was talking about putting a deposit down on a pre-construction deal there. My blood ran cold. I called Taylor immediately and asked her to find out more. What she discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Amanda had already collected substantial deposits from at least 8 wealthy acquaintances for pre-sale reservation agreements on condos that didn't yet exist, in a building she had no legal permission to convert. This wasn't just unethical, it was fraud. My sister was taking money for properties she couldn't legally deliver, likely using those deposits to fund her lavish lifestyle while planning to file conversion permits later. If the permits were denied, those people would lose their deposits, or Amanda would be forced to return money she had probably already spent. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My sister wasn't just greedy, she was potentially criminal in her actions. And our parents were enabling her, blind to the damage she was causing to dozens of lives, including potentially their own. I returned to my apartment that night with a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my rent anymore. It was about protecting vulnerable tenants, exposing fraud, and perhaps even saving my sister from herself before her actions led to consequences none of us could control. I just don't understand why you're being so difficult about this, Helene. My father's voice carried that familiar tone of disappointment he reserved exclusively for me. Your sister is trying to build something successful. Can't you be supportive for once? I had requested this meeting with my parents specifically without Amanda present, hoping for a rational conversation about the rent increases. Instead, I found myself in their living room being lectured like a teenager, rather than the 35-year-old professional I was. Dad, this isn't about support. It's about fairness and legality, I explained, trying to keep my voice even. The rent increases are far above market rate, and they're targeting vulnerable people who have nowhere else to go. Mom shook her head, her expression a mixture of confusion and frustration. Honestly, Helene, I think this is about jealousy. Your sister has always had a knack for business that you haven't. It's okay to admit that. The casual dismissal stung, but I pressed on. This isn't about jealousy. Have you seen the actual numbers? Mrs. Cooper is 78 years old and has lived in that building for 22 years. Her Social Security check is only $2,400 a month. How is she supposed to pay $5,500 in rent? There are other apartments, Dad said with a wave of his hand. Amanda explained that there are plenty of affordable options in the suburbs. The suburbs? Dad, Mrs. Cooper doesn't drive. All her doctors are within walking distance of Riverside. Her entire support network is in that neighborhood. The conversation was going nowhere. Every concern I raised was deflected with blind faith in Amanda's business acumen and thinly veiled suggestions that my legal career had left me unable to understand how real business works. Then the front door opened, and Amanda walked in unannounced. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, setting her designer handbag on the entryway table. "Having a little family meeting without me?" Mom immediately brightened. "Amanda, we were just discussing your plans for the Riverside building. Helene has some concerns." My sister's smile didn't reach her eyes as she took a seat directly across from me. I heard. "Mrs. Sanchez from apartment 2B called my office crying about her rent increase. Funny how you were mentioned as suggesting she might have legal options." I met her gaze steadily. I simply told her the truth. These increases might constitute constructive eviction. Always the tenant advocate, Amanda sighed dramatically. "Look, I came here because I wanted to offer you something, Helene. A gesture of goodwill." She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the coffee table. "I'm willing to give you a 6-month transition period. You can pay your current rent for 3 months, then 50% of the increase for 3 months after that before moving to the full amount. That's more than generous." I didn't touch the folder. "And the other tenants?" "This offer is for you only," she said sharply. "Family consideration." "That's so thoughtful of your sister," Mom interjected, beaming at Amanda. I stood up, unable to continue the charade. "I need to consider this. I'll be in touch." Amanda's voice stopped me as I reached for my coat. "Don't take too long. And Helene? I'd appreciate if you'd stop stirring up trouble with the other tenants. It's not a good look for an attorney to be inciting potential legal action against her own sister." The threat was thinly veiled but clear. Amanda was reminding me that she could make trouble for me professionally if I opposed her. Outside in my car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. This confrontation had confirmed what I already suspected. There would be no reasoning with Amanda or my parents. I would need to use the resources Grandma had left me. That weekend, I opened the metal box Grandma Eleanor had left in my care. Inside were organized files spanning decades, financial records, property deeds, personal letters, and most importantly, her private journals. I spent hours reading through her meticulous documentation of family events and business dealings. What emerged was a disturbing pattern. Grandma had been aware of Amanda's manipulative nature for years. She had documented instances where money had gone missing from her purse after Amanda's visits. She noted how Amanda had convinced our parents to pay for increasingly extravagant expenses while fabricating business opportunities that never materialized. Most shocking was a journal entry from just 2 months before her death. "Amanda visited today, asking again about changing my will. Brought papers she wanted me to sign. When I refused, she became angry, saying I never supported her like I supported Helene. I fear what she might do as my health fails. Must speak to Edward, her attorney, about protecting the estate." I found more. Letters from Grandma's attorney confirming her suspicions that Amanda had been pressuring her about the will, and notes about strange changes to her medication schedule after Amanda's visits. But the most damning evidence was a document tucked into the back of the final journal. A copy of what appeared to be a codicil to Grandma's will, purportedly signed 2 weeks before her death, redirecting several valuable properties to Amanda. Having worked closely with Grandma on legal matters, I immediately noticed problems with the signature. It was shaky and irregular in ways inconsistent with her handwriting even during her illness. The witness signatures also raised red flags. One was from Amanda's friend Diane, whom Grandma had specifically mentioned distrusting in her journals. I contacted Edward Levinson, Grandma's attorney, now retired. After explaining my concerns, he confirmed my suspicions. "That codicil never went through my office," he said firmly. "Eleanor's final amendment to her will was made 3 months before her death, when she was still clear-minded and fully capable. Any subsequent changes would be highly suspicious." While I wasn't ready to accuse my sister of forgery outright, the evidence suggested Amanda had attempted to alter Grandma's will unlawfully. The codicil had ultimately been rejected during probate due to inconsistencies, which explained Amanda's anger at the will reading, She had expected to receive assets that remained in Grandma's main estate. Meanwhile, I began building community among the Riverside tenants. I started with casual conversations in the lobby, expressing shared concern about the rent increases. Soon, I was hosting small gatherings in my apartment where residents could discuss their situations. The stories were heartbreaking. The Rodriguez family would have to move their children to a new school district in the middle of the year. Retired teacher Mr. Bennett would lose access to the senior center where he volunteered daily. Recent college graduate Sarah would have to give up her first job and move back with her parents in another state. I carefully documented every case, building a comprehensive file showing the human impact of Amanda's actions. I also connected with community housing advocates who provided valuable advice on tenant rights and strategies for fighting predatory landlord practices. Through these connections, I met with sympathetic officials from the city planning department who confirmed that Amanda's condo conversion plans would face significant hurdles. The building was in a zone with special protections for affordable housing, and conversion would require community input, impact studies, and likely significant concessions for displaced tenants. As I built my case and support network, Amanda continued her campaign of pressure and intimidation. She began sending maintenance workers to conduct inspections of apartments, citing trivial lease violations as grounds for potential eviction. Hallway conversations were interrupted by her surprise appearances in the building, and tenants reported receiving personal calls urging them to make the smart choice and leave quietly. My parents remained firmly in Amanda's corner, repeating her talking points about property rights and market forces whenever I attempted to discuss the situation. I realized with growing sadness that they had become so invested in Amanda's success narrative that they couldn't or wouldn't see the damage she was causing. The final blow came when I discovered, through a careful review of property records, that Amanda had indeed attempted to file that fraudulent codicil to Grandma's will, specifically to gain control of the Riverside building. The document had been rejected due to irregularities, which was why she had been forced to sell the building to my company to get cash. The knowledge that my sister had likely forged our grandmother's signature in an attempt to steal inheritance marked a turning point. This was no longer about differing business ethics or family favoritism. Amanda had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, and I needed to be strategic about how to protect everyone involved, including my parents, who remained blind to her true nature. "We need to document everything," I told the group of concerned tenants gathered in my living room. 20 people sat wherever they could find space, on chairs, the sofa, even cross-legged on the floor. They represented nearly every unit in the building, united by Amanda's predatory rent increases. Take photographs of any maintenance issues that aren't addressed. Record all interactions with management. Save every written communication, I continued, passing out folders with information on tenant rights. This isn't just about fighting individual rent increases anymore. It's about stopping an illegal condo conversion that would displace all of us. After consulting with financial advisors about leveraging my position as the building's true owner, I had developed a comprehensive strategy. While I wasn't yet ready to reveal my ownership, that card would be played at the perfect moment. I could work behind the scenes to strengthen the tenant's position and gather evidence of Amanda's fraudulent activities. Mrs. Cooper raised her hand tentatively. "I'm afraid, Helene. My grandson offered to let me move in with his family in Ohio, but I don't want to leave my home. What if your sister retaliates against us for fighting her?" It was a valid concern. Amanda had already demonstrated her willingness to play dirty. "That's why we need to act as a unified group," I explained. "Tenant harassment laws are strong in this state. If we document everything and file complaints as a collective, it creates legal protection." I didn't add that as the actual owner, I could ensure no retaliatory actions would be permitted, regardless of what Amanda ordered. The meeting was interrupted by the sudden sound of drilling from the hallway. We opened the door to find workers removing the communal mailboxes. "What's going on here?" I asked one of the workers. "Management orders?" He shrugged. "We're installing individual lockboxes next week. Building's getting an upgrade." This was a classic harassment tactic. Disruptive, unnecessary construction to make tenants uncomfortable. More concerning was what I discovered later that day. The upgrade hadn't been permitted properly, another violation I carefully documented. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda escalated her tactics. Formal eviction notices appeared on the doors of 3 residents who had been most vocal at tenant meetings. The notices cited lease violations that were either minor or completely fabricated. Then construction crews arrived at 6 in the morning, jackhammering in the lobby without notice or permits. My carefully established tenant network proved invaluable. Within hours of each new tactic, I received multiple text messages with photos and details. City inspectors, whom I had previously briefed about the situation, responded quickly to reports of unpermitted work, issuing stop, work orders, and fines. Meanwhile, I continued my parallel investigation into Amanda's finances. Through careful legal research and connections from my professional network, I uncovered something that explained her increasingly desperate behavior. Amanda had accumulated massive gambling debts at casinos in 3 states, totaling over $1 million. She had been borrowing from increasingly unsavory lenders to cover her losses and maintain her facade of success. This discovery made her frantic push for the condo conversion clear. She wasn't just after profit. She was trying to avoid financial ruin and possibly worse consequences from her creditors. Then came the emergency family meeting at our parents' house. Amanda had called it, citing important business developments she wanted to share. When I arrived, I found not just our parents, but several aunts, uncles, and cousins gathered in the living room. Amanda stood at the center of the room beside a professional-looking display board covered with architectural renderings. She wore her most expensive suit and a confident smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've asked you all here today because I want to offer my family first opportunity to invest in an exceptional property development," she announced, unveiling the board with a flourish. Riverside Luxury Residences, an exclusive condominium community in one of the city's most rapidly appreciating neighborhoods. The rendering showed our humble apartment building transformed beyond recognition. A sleek glass and steel facade, a doorman, a rooftop garden. Inside, the modest apartments had been combined and upgraded to spacious, high-end units with designer kitchens and marble bathrooms. The initial investors stand to see returns of 30% within 18 months, Amanda continued, distributing glossy brochures. "I'm offering family members priority reservation of units at pre-market rates, plus investor shares for those interested in pure financial returns." Our relatives looked impressed, examining the brochures with interest. My parents beamed with pride from their seats of honor near Amanda's display. I listened as Amanda detailed her vision, noting each misrepresentation and outright lie. She claimed to have all necessary approvals in process, projected completion dates that were wildly unrealistic, and promised amenities that would be physically impossible in the building's footprint. When she opened the floor for questions, I remained silent, observing as family members asked about investment minimums and reservation deposits. Amanda smoothly collected checks from 2 uncles and a cousin, promising to send formal agreements later. As the presentation concluded and people broke into smaller conversation groups, I overheard my mother talking to Aunt Patricia. "Amanda's been working so hard on this project," Mom was saying. "Helene has been difficult as usual, stirring up the tenants with talk about rights and regulations. She's always been jealous of her sister's success." The casual cruelty of the comments struck me deeply. After all these years, my parents still couldn't see past Amanda's charismatic performance to the hollow reality beneath. After most relatives had left, Amanda cornered me in the kitchen. "I know what you're doing with the tenant meetings," she said, her voice low and threatening. "It would be a shame if your law firm found out you were interfering with a legitimate business transaction. Conflict of interest can end careers, you know." I met her gaze steadily. "And fraud can lead to prison time, Amanda." Something flickered in her eyes, a moment of fear quickly masked by anger. "You always were a self-righteous bitch," she hissed. "This development is happening whether you and those pathetic tenants like it or not. I have investors counting on me." "Investors like our uncles? Or the friends who've already put down deposits on non-existent condos?" I asked quietly. She blanched slightly before recovering her composure. "Mind your own business, Helene. Final warning." That evening, as I was leaving my parents' house, my father pulled me aside. His expression was unusually serious. "Your mother and I have been discussing this situation with the building," he said. "We think you should accept Amanda's payment plan and start looking for a new place. It would make family gatherings less tense." "Dad, this isn't about my apartment anymore. Amanda is breaking laws and hurting people." He sighed heavily. "Helene, businesses sometimes require tough decisions. Your sister has investors to answer to." "Including you and Mom?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. His momentary hesitation told me everything. "We believe in supporting family," he said finally. "We've helped Amanda with some of the initial funding." "How much, Dad?" I pressed. "That's between us and Amanda," he replied firmly. "But we're confident in our investment." Later that night, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Payment due, 3 days. Or else." It was clearly meant for Amanda, but had been sent to me by mistake. The sender had confused our similar phone numbers, a mistake that had happened occasionally over the years. The threatening tone confirmed my fears about Amanda's financial entanglements. She wasn't just dealing with banks and legitimate investors. She had borrowed from people who used threats rather than contracts to ensure repayment. The next morning, I made a critical discovery while reviewing documents filed with the county recorder's office. Amanda had used the building as collateral for multiple high-interest loans, essentially pledging property she no longer owned as security. This wasn't just unethical, it was bank fraud. Even more alarming was what I found when I expanded my search to include my parents' property records. Amanda had convinced them to take out a home equity line of credit against their fully paid house, money that had undoubtedly gone to fund her scheme or pay off her debts. My parents had put their retirement security on the line, potentially risking homelessness if Amanda's plans fell through. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a picture more disturbing than I had imagined. Amanda wasn't just a manipulative sister or an unethical businesswoman. She was desperate and dangerous, willing to sacrifice anyone, including our parents, to maintain her facade and escape her financial troubles. I contacted Edward Levinson again, sharing my findings and finalizing my legal strategy. The time for working in the shadows was ending. Amanda had escalated to the point where direct intervention was necessary to protect everyone involved: the tenants, my parents, and ironically, even Amanda herself from the consequences of her increasingly frantic and illegal actions. The hallway outside apartment 3C echoed with raised voices. I had just returned from work when I heard the commotion and hurried toward the sound. What I found made my blood boil. Amanda stood flanked by 2 men in security uniforms, facing off against Mrs. Cooper, who was trembling visibly, one hand clutching her chest. "The notice was legally served 2 weeks ago," Amanda was saying coldly. "Your belongings need to be out by tomorrow." "But my medication," Mrs. Cooper pleaded, her voice shaking. "My grandson can't come to help until next weekend. I can't possibly move everything myself." "That's not my problem," Amanda replied. "The renovation schedule can't be delayed for individual hardship cases." I stepped forward immediately. "What's going on here?" Amanda turned, her expression hardening when she saw me. "This is a private matter between management and tenant. It doesn't concern you." "Mrs. Cooper is 78 years old and has a heart condition," I said, moving to stand beside the elderly woman. "She's been a tenant in good standing for over 20 years. What possible lease violation could justify this?" One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably, clearly not having signed up for evicting elderly women. "She has an unauthorized clothes washing machine," Amanda stated. Section 14. Paragraph 3 of the lease specifically prohibits additional appliances without written permission. "A compact washer," her doctor recommended, "because she can't carry laundry up and down 3 flights of stairs," I countered. "Which she requested permission for in writing 6 years ago and was approved by the previous management." Mrs. Cooper nodded vigorously. "I have the letter. It's in my files." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Approval from previous management is no longer valid. Current policy supersedes all prior arrangements." "That's not how contract law works, and you know it," I said firmly. "As an attorney, I strongly advise you to reconsider this action, which could constitute elder abuse under state law." The security guards exchanged glances, clearly reconsidering their involvement. Amanda noticed their hesitation and changed tactics. Mrs. Cooper, she said with forced pleasantness, perhaps we can discuss a short extension. Why don't you come to my office tomorrow? Any discussions can happen right here, with a witness present, I interjected, placing a protective hand on Mrs. Cooper's shoulder. Amanda's facade cracked momentarily, raw anger flashing across her face before she regained control. Fine, 1 week extension. But after that, the eviction proceeds regardless of circumstances. She turned on her heel and walked away, the confused security guards following after a moment's hesitation. Mrs. Cooper burst into tears once they were gone. Thank you, Helene. I don't know what I would have done. I helped her back into her apartment and made her tea while she calmed down. I'm not going to let her bully you or anyone else in this building, I promised. We're going to fight this together. The confrontation in the hallway marked a turning point. Amanda had crossed a line from unethical business practices to actively threatening the health and safety of vulnerable residents. I knew it was time to accelerate my plans. The next day, I received a text from my mother. Emergency family therapy session this Saturday at 2 p.m., Dr. Williamson's office. Attendance mandatory. When I arrived at the therapist's office that weekend, I immediately sensed the setup. Dr. Williamson, a polished woman in her 50s, welcomed me with professional warmth, but her office was arranged with my parents and Amanda sitting together on one sofa, with a single chair positioned opposite them. The physical arrangement told me everything about how this session had been framed before I even arrived. Thank you for joining us, Helene. Dr. Williamson began once I was seated. Your family has asked for this session to address some concerning behaviors and help rebuild family harmony. I remained silent, observing. Amanda and your parents have shared their perspective on the situation at the Riverside property, the therapist continued. They're concerned that your opposition to necessary business changes indicates some underlying issues that might benefit from exploration in a safe space. The audacity was almost admirable. Amanda had clearly spent considerable time establishing her narrative with this therapist before I ever entered the room. Could you share why you've been organizing tenants against your sister's legitimate business plans? Dr. Williamson asked. I chose my words carefully. I believe in protecting vulnerable people from exploitation. The elderly woman your patient attempted to evict this week has a documented heart condition that could have been triggered by the stress of forced relocation. Business decisions sometimes have difficult human elements, the therapist offered sympathetically, but that doesn't make them wrong or exploitative. It does when they involve bank fraud, tenant harassment, and forgery, I replied calmly. Amanda leapt to her feet. That's slander! See what we've been dealing with, doctor? She's making outrageous accusations because she can't stand my success. My mother began to cry on cue. Why can't you just be happy for your sister, Helene? Why do you always have to fight against our family? My father put his arm around my mother while glaring at me. This is exactly the kind of behavior that's tearing this family apart. Your jealousy has become pathological. Dr. Williamson attempted to regain control of the session. Let's try to use I feel statements rather than accusations. I stood up. I feel that this session was arranged under false pretenses. I feel that my sister has manipulated this therapeutic environment just as she's manipulated our family for years. And I know for a fact that she's engaging in multiple illegal activities that are putting our parents' financial security at risk. If you continue with these baseless accusations and interfere with my business, you leave us no choice, my father said, his voice breaking with emotion that seemed genuine. We will have to cut ties with you completely, Helene. Is that what you want? The threat of family estrangement, their ultimate weapon, used countless times throughout my life, whenever I failed to conform to their expectations. What I want, I said quietly, is for you both to open your eyes before Amanda's actions cause harm that can't be undone. She's put your home at risk. My mother gasped. What are you talking about? Ask Amanda about the home equity line of credit she convinced you to take out. Ask her what she used that money for, and whether you'll ever see it again. Amanda's face contorted with rage. You're investigating me? Going through private financial records? That's illegal. Public records are exactly that. Public, I replied. And as your concerned sister, I have every right to be worried when I see our parents' home being used as collateral for your schemes. Dr. Williamson attempted to intervene. "Perhaps we should take a step back." "There's no need," I said, gathering my purse. "I can see this session isn't about healing or truth. It's about validating Amanda's version of reality." I turned to my parents. "I love you both, and I'll continue to protect your interests even if you don't understand or appreciate it right now." As I reached the door, Amanda called after me. "You've chosen your side, Helene. Don't expect any mercy when this all plays out." The naked threat hung in the air as I closed the door behind me. That evening, I received a series of increasingly alarming text messages from Amanda's number, clearly meant for someone else but misdirected to me due to our similar digits. The messages referenced final payment arrangements and included the phrase "guaranteed return from property conversion." Most concerning was the last message. "Parents' equity will cover the gap until closing." They don't need to know. Meanwhile, tenants reported new intimidation tactics: water shut, offs, fire alarm testing at night, and mysterious inspections where personal belongings were disturbed. I advised everyone to install simple security cameras in their apartments, which quickly provided evidence of maintenance workers searching through private documents when residents were away. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. While reviewing my parents' financial documents that I had legally accessed as their former financial advisor, I found evidence that Amanda had been accessing their accounts without proper authorization. She had set up automatic transfers from their retirement fund to an account they had no knowledge of, using a power of attorney document that appeared to have their signatures but contained concerning irregularities. Even worse, I uncovered communications between Amanda and a developer known for controversial tactics in tenant displacement. The developer had offered to purchase the building, which Amanda no longer owned, for conversion to luxury housing. The correspondence made it clear that Amanda had presented herself as the owner, taken a substantial good faith deposit, and promised to deliver a vacant building within 60 days. With this evidence in hand, I contacted the state's Attorney General's office and spoke with their real estate fraud division. Without revealing my ownership of the building yet, I provided documentation of Amanda's activities and requested guidance on protecting the tenants and my parents. The final piece fell into place when I received a frantic call from my father late one evening. "Helene," he said, his voice shaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Something's wrong with the house paperwork. The bank called about missed payments on a loan I don't remember taking." "The home equity line," I said gently. "Dad, how much did Amanda tell you she was borrowing against the house?" "Just $50,000 for short-term business expenses," he whispered. "But the bank says the outstanding balance is over $300,000, and they're threatening foreclosure." My heart ached for him. "Where's Mom?" "Asleep. I haven't told her yet. I can't. I don't know how to tell her we might lose our home." "Dad, I can help," I assured him. "But I need you to be completely honest with me about everything Amanda has asked you to sign over the past year." There was a long pause. She had us sign some papers for the building development, investment documents, and something about being guarantors for a business loan. The full picture was now crystal clear. Amanda had not only manipulated our parents into leveraging their home, but had also made them guarantors for her other debts. If her scheme collapsed, which it inevitably would, they would lose everything. "Dad, I need you to trust me," I said firmly. "Don't sign anything else, no matter what Amanda says. And please, gather any documents you have and meet me at my office tomorrow morning." After we hung up, I made the final preparations for what needed to happen next. Amanda had gone too far, threatening elderly tenants, defrauding investors, and now putting our parents at risk of homelessness. The time for working behind the scenes was over. I contacted Edward Levinson and my own attorney, finalizing the details of my strategy. Then I called Janet Miller at my firm, taking her into my confidence about the situation and requesting a short leave of absence to handle the family crisis. My colleagues at the Tenant Rights Organization provided the last pieces of documentation I needed. By morning, I was fully prepared for the confrontation that had been years in the making. A confrontation that would finally expose Amanda's schemes and protect everyone she had intended to sacrifice for her own benefit. The Meridian Room at Bellamy's restaurant sparkled with crystal chandeliers and fine china. Amanda had spared no expense for what she was calling the Riverside Luxury Residence's signing ceremony. Extended family members mingled with potential investors, architects, and representatives from Westfield Development Group. Our parents sat at the head table, nervously elegant in their Sunday best. I watched from just outside the private dining room, taking in the scene. Amanda stood at the center, resplendent in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, animatedly describing her vision to an enraptured audience of wealthy prospects. My team waited at strategic positions. Edward Levinson and my personal attorney near the service entrance, Janet Miller by the main doors, and city officials, including a representative from the housing department and the district attorney's office, stationed in the restaurant's private meeting room next door. At precisely 7:30, I entered the room, accompanied by my legal team. Amanda faltered mid-sentence when she saw me, quickly recovering with a tight smile. "Helene, I didn't think you'd make it," she said, voice dripping with false warmth. Everyone, my sister finally decided to join us for this momentous occasion. I smiled pleasantly, taking a seat at an empty table near the front. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Amanda." The developer, James Westfield, a sharp, featured man in his 60s, approached the podium. "Before we begin the formal signing, I want to congratulate Amanda Taylor on her vision for transforming an outdated property into a landmark residential development. In my 40 years in this business, I've rarely seen such a perfect combination of location, concept, and execution potential." Polite applause rippled through the room. Amanda beamed, soaking in the adulation. "We at Westfield Development are proud to partner with Taylor Elite Properties on this venture," he continued. "Our legal teams have prepared all necessary documents, and we're ready to proceed with funding once the paperwork is complete." Amanda took the microphone, her expression triumphant. "Thank you, James. This project represents the culmination of a dream I've had since childhood, to create living spaces that elevate and inspire." She gestured toward our parents. "My father taught me the value of vision, and my mother showed me the importance of persistence. Without their unwavering support, none of this would be possible." Our father wiped away a tear as our mother nodded proudly. "Today, we formalize our partnership and begin the transformation of Riverside into a landmark property," Amanda continued. "The outdated apartments will become 30, two luxury condominiums, ranging from $1.2 to $3.5 million. I'm pleased to announce that 26 units are already reserved with deposits secured." More applause, louder this time. Amanda signaled to a waiter, who began distributing champagne flutes. "Before we sign the final agreements, I'd like to offer a toast to family, vision, and prosperity." Everyone stood, raising their glasses. I remained seated, watching. "To Riverside Luxury Residences," Amanda declared. "May it stand as a testament to Taylor family excellence for generations to come." As glasses clinked and congratulations echoed, I finally rose. "If I might say a few words before the signing?" Amanda's smile faltered slightly, but with all eyes on her, she had little choice. "Of course, sister dear, a few brief remarks." I moved to the front of the room, standing beside Amanda at the podium. "First, I'd like to congratulate my sister on her remarkable presentation. The renderings are truly impressive, and she's clearly convinced many of you to invest substantial sums in this project." Amanda's smile became fixed, her eyes wary. "However, before you sign any contracts or hand over any more money, there's some information you should know." I opened my portfolio and removed a document. "This is the current deed to the Riverside apartment building at 462 Magnolia Avenue." I held it up so everyone could see. "You'll notice it's registered to Riverview Holdings LLC, not to Taylor Elite Properties or to Amanda Taylor personally." Murmurs spread through the room as investors exchanged concerned glances. "What's your point, Helene?" Amanda snapped, reaching for the microphone. I kept it firmly in my hand. "My point is simple. Amanda doesn't own the Riverside building and hasn't for over 3 years." The room fell completely silent. "This is ridiculous," Amanda laughed nervously. "Some kind of clerical error. The building has been in our family for years." "That part is true," I acknowledged. Our grandmother owned it originally. Then you convinced her to transfer ownership to you shortly before her death, under questionable circumstances. But you sold it 3 years ago when you were in financial difficulty. You sold it to Riverview Holdings. I paused. A company that I own. Gasps and whispers erupted around the room. Our father half rose from his chair, confusion etched across his face. That's impossible, Amanda hissed. I handed the deed to James Westfield, who examined it with narrowed eyes. This appears legitimate, he said slowly, looking between Amanda and me. It is legitimate, I confirmed. Amanda sold the building to my company 3 years ago. She received fair market value, 15% above, actually, and the transaction was properly recorded with the county. She has no ownership interest whatsoever in the property she's been promising to convert and sell to you. Amanda lunged for the microphone. This is a misunderstanding. I have a purchase agreement with Helene's company. Tell them, Helene. There is no purchase agreement, I said calmly. You've been collecting deposits for condominiums in a building you don't own, without any legal right to convert or sell it. That's fraud, Amanda. The developer's attorney was now urgently whispering in his ear. Investors began standing, demanding explanations. Furthermore, I continued, raising my voice slightly above the growing commotion, the building is in a zone with special protections for affordable housing. Any conversion would require permits and approvals that haven't been applied for, much less granted. The current tenants have legal protections that would prevent immediate eviction even if a legitimate conversion were approved. I gestured toward Janet Miller, who distributed folders to key investors. These documents detail the actual legal status of the building and the fraudulent nature of the investment opportunity you've been offered. Amanda's face contorted with rage. You planned this all along. You bought the building just to sabotage me. I bought the building to preserve affordable housing in our community and protect the residents Grandma Eleanor cared about. I corrected her. I only revealed my ownership today because your fraudulent scheme has gone too far. I turned to the stunned audience. I apologize to everyone who has been misled. My attorney will assist anyone who has provided deposits to Amanda with the process of filing for restitution. The room erupted in chaos. Investors surrounded Amanda, demanding explanations and refunds. The developer's legal team huddled in urgent consultation. Our mother began to weep openly while our father sat in stunned silence. Through the commotion, Amanda suddenly shouted, You think you've won? You haven't. I've already spent the deposits. And I'm leaving the country next week. Good luck getting a penny back from Panama. Her unintended confession silenced the room. In her rage, she had revealed her exit strategy, take the money and run, leaving investors with worthless promises and our parents potentially responsible for her debts. At that moment, the district attorney's representative stepped forward from the back of the room, flanked by 2 police officers in plain clothes. Amanda Taylor, he said formally, in light of your public admission and the evidence we've been provided, I'm placing you under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, theft by deception, and attempted real estate fraud. Amanda's face drained of color as the officers approached. This is all a mistake. My sister is trying to destroy me because she's always been jealous. As the officers read Amanda her rights, she turned her venomous gaze toward our parents. Tell them this is wrong. Tell them I was doing this for all of us. Our father stood slowly, his face ashen. Amanda, did you really take out $300,000 against our home without telling us the truth? I was going to pay it back with the condo proceeds, she shouted desperately. It was a bridge loan. The investment would have paid off everything. And the retirement accounts? My mother asked in a small voice. The missing money from our savings? Amanda's expression shifted from rage to calculation. I needed it temporarily. You two are always talking about helping me succeed. This was your chance to be part of something huge. The raw selfishness of her response seemed to finally break through decades of willful blindness. My father's shoulders slumped as my mother covered her face with her hands. As the officers escorted Amanda toward the exit, she made one last desperate attempt. Dad, Mom, you can't let them do this to me. Bail me out. I'll explain everything. The doors closed behind them, leaving a stunned silence in the elegant dining room. I approached my parents, who looked suddenly older and smaller than I had ever seen them. "I'm so sorry," I said gently. "I tried to warn you." My father looked at me with tears in his eyes. "How long have you known? About everything?" "I suspected for years. I've had proof for months. I was trying to find a way to protect everyone, including Amanda, from herself." "And the building?" my mother asked. "You really own it?" I nodded. "Grandma Eleanor left me the resources to buy it when Amanda decided to sell. I kept it secret because I knew how you would react." My father shook his head slowly. "We would have accused you of undermining your sister, just like we always did." The admission clearly cost him dearly. Around us, Janet and the legal team were organizing the shocked investors, explaining the situation and documenting their losses for potential restitution. The restaurant staff hovered uncertainly at the edges of the room, witnessing the collapse of what should have been a celebration. "What happens now?" my mother asked, her voice barely audible. "Now," I said, taking their hands in mine, "we start picking up the pieces, together." 1 year later, the courtyard of the renamed Eleanor Gardens apartment complex bloomed with spring flowers. Residents gathered for the annual community picnic, a tradition I had started after taking over active management of the building. Tables covered with potluck dishes lined the renovated common area, and children played on the new playground equipment. Amanda had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for multiple counts of fraud, with additional state charges for elder financial abuse and forgery. The court had ordered restitution to her victims, though most would likely never recover their full losses. The investors who had paid deposits for non-existent condominiums had filed a separate civil suit that was still working through the courts. My parents sat at a picnic table near the garden beds, looking more relaxed than I had seen them in years. The process of rebuilding our relationship had been painful and slow, filled with difficult conversations about decades of family dynamics. They had been forced to sell their house to cover the fraudulent equity loan Amanda had taken, but I had helped them secure a comfortable apartment in Eleanor Gardens at an affordable rent. "Mrs. Cooper wants you to try her famous apple pie," I said, setting down plates in front of them. "She says it's Grandma Eleanor's recipe." My mother smiled tentatively. "Your grandmother would love what you've done with this place." It was one of the first genuinely warm comments she had made about my work with the building. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. After Amanda's arrest, I had gone public with my ownership of the building, explaining my intentions to the residents and implementing the community-centered management plan I had developed. Rents were adjusted to fair market rates. Actual fair rates, not the inflated numbers Amanda had demanded, with special considerations for long-term residents. A portion of the building's income was set aside for ongoing improvements and maintenance. Most significantly, I had established a pathway to partial tenant ownership through a cooperative housing model inspired by Grandma Eleanor's journals. Residents could opt into a program that converted a percentage of their rent into equity shares, gradually building ownership stakes in their homes. "Frank says the roof repairs will be finished next week," my father commented, watching the maintenance supervisor organizing a volleyball game with some of the younger residents. "He seems to really enjoy working here now." "He does," I agreed. "Everyone works better when they're treated with respect." The healing process hadn't been easy for any of us. My parents had struggled with guilt over their enabling of Amanda's behavior and their treatment of me throughout our lives. I had wrestled with my own complicated feelings. Satisfaction at finally being vindicated, sadness for the family relationship we might have had, and lingering anger over years of being dismissed and devalued. But we were finding our way forward. My father had started volunteering with a community financial literacy program, using his painful experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. My mother had found unexpected friendship with several of the building's elderly residents, organizing weekly card games and movie nights. As for me, I had taken a leave of absence from my law firm to focus on developing Eleanor Gardens as a model for affordable, community-oriented housing. The experience had awakened a passion for creating sustainable living spaces that preserved neighborhood character while providing security for residents. Mrs. Cooper approached our table, moving with surprising energy for her 79 years. Helene, the tenant council voted unanimously to approve the community garden expansion, she reported proudly. As head of the resident advisory board, she had blossomed into a confident community leader. We'd like to dedicate the new section to your parents, if that's all right. My father looked stunned. To us? But we haven't done anything. Mrs. Cooper patted his shoulder. You raised a daughter who saved our homes. That's quite something. As the afternoon progressed, I found myself standing before the recently installed plaque in the lobby, a bronze portrait of Grandma Eleanor alongside her favorite saying, "Property is more than buildings. It's the foundation for lives and communities." Sarah, the young resident who had feared having to abandon her first job, joined me. Now serving as the building's assistant manager while finishing her degree, she had become an enthusiastic advocate for cooperative housing. I visited Amanda yesterday, she said quietly. Prison visitation was not something I discussed openly with many people. How was she? I asked. After months of refusing to see me, Amanda had finally agreed to monthly visits, though our interactions remained tense and limited. Better, I think. She's teaching a business class for the other inmates. Sarah hesitated. She asked about your parents, whether they ever talk about her. I nodded. The complicated grief my parents experienced regarding Amanda was something they were still working through with their therapist, a different one this time, without preconceived narratives. The rehabilitation counselor thinks she's making progress, I said. Real progress, not just performance for the parole board. I wasn't sure I believed that entirely, but I wanted to. Despite everything, Amanda was still my sister, and I hoped that somewhere beneath the layers of deception and entitlement was a person capable of genuine change. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the lobby windows, illuminating the gathering of residents, elderly couples who had found security in their golden years, young families building their first homes, middle-aged professionals who valued community over luxury amenities. All people who might have been displaced by Amanda's scheme, now thriving in the environment Grandma Eleanor had envisioned. That evening, after the picnic had ended and the courtyard was quiet, I sat alone on my balcony, reflecting on the journey of the past year. The wound of family betrayal had begun to heal, though the scar would always remain. I had found my voice and learned to stand firm in my convictions, even when facing the people whose approval I had sought my entire life. More importantly, I had honored Grandma Eleanor's true legacy, not just the financial resources she had left me, but her vision of property as a vehicle for community good rather than merely personal profit. The building that bore her name now stood as a testament to those values, a living example of an alternative to the relentless gentrification consuming so many neighborhoods. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we couldn't see what was right in front of us. I smiled and texted back. Family is worth fighting for. The real family we can be, not the fantasy version Amanda tried to sell. After a moment, another message appeared. Your grandmother always saw you clearly. We're finally catching up. As the evening settled into night, I thought about the long road that had brought me here. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth. Family healing never followed a straight line, and Amanda's eventual release would bring new challenges. But for the first time in years, I felt genuine hope for our future, not as the perfect family my parents had pretended we were, but as flawed, genuine people committed to honesty and growth. The building around me hummed with the quiet sounds of community, distant music, the murmur of conversations, children being called in for bedtime. These were the true measures of success, far more meaningful than luxury finishes or million-dollar price tags. This was Grandma Eleanor's vision, and now it was mine too. Homes that nurtured lives rather than simply housing them, a community that supported its members through all of life's challenges. I had learned that justice didn't always look like courtroom victories or public vindication, though those had their place. Sometimes, the most profound justice came in the form of broken patterns, new beginnings, and communities preserved. It came in the dignity of elderly residents aging in place, surrounded by neighbors who knew their names and valued their presence. Looking out over the courtyard where children's toys now rested alongside the gardening tools used by retired residents, I felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what winning truly meant. Not defeating an opponent, but creating something worthwhile and lasting from what could have been lost. Have you ever had to stand up against someone close to you when you knew they were doing something wrong? It's one of the hardest tests of character we can face. Sometimes the most difficult battles aren't against strangers, but against those we love who have lost their way. I'd love to hear your stories of when you had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe for more real, life experiences that explore the complicated dynamics of family, justice, and finding your voice. Share with someone who might need encouragement to stand firm in their values, even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize true family bonds based on respect and love, not manipulation and control.